Hello, hello, and welcome to another Whole Women Collective episode. So, hopefully, we'll be wrapping this particular topic up, but we're yielded to the Lord, so we will definitely be led as He leads us. However, our plan is to go ahead and wrap this up and put a nice bow on suffering in silence. So, with that being said, welcome to the Whole Women Collective, Five Women, One Collective, a gathering of voices, experiences, wisdom, healing, and truth. Five women, five journeys, five voices, yet one shared assignment to speak life, restoration, wisdom, and truth into the hearts of women everywhere. And as you've heard me say at the beginning of every episode, something powerful happens when women committed to wholeness come together. Before we get into our topic, we want to make sure that you subscribe and follow us on our YouTube channel, on our social media handles. You don't want to miss this conversation. There's always a powerful conversation. There's always practical tools. There's always a bit of a piece to the puzzle that you were looking for, and you found it right here. So, with that being said, let's jump right in and welcome Delisa, Danny, Mary, and Erica, and myself. My name is CJ. How y'all doing out there? All right. So, the last episode, we had to cut it short so we can jump into Delisa ended us. And I know that some spirits were stirring with Mary, Danny, and Erica. So, without further ado, I'm not going to belabor the introduction. We're going to jump right in. So, if one of you ladies want to go ahead and take the mic and respond or shed some more light on what Delisa said in at the end of the last episode.
All righty. Well, I will go. Amen. She said so much, and it stirred so much, even from your comment and really your question about conditioning. And one of the things that I tell people when they are trying to put a finger on the why for the cycles and why am I this way or why do I think this way is to go back and being aware of what you're feeling, what you're sensing, and go back to the first time you felt it. Because the first time you felt it is where your DNA got switched. That's where you suffered an interjection of something that may have not been normal, but really set your life on course for cycles. And that's really the root. And Erica began to bring that out, and that is something that I don't think we do enough of. We scratch the surface of things, but until we get to that root. And so, even in my own life and how I process certain things, um, I realized that when you watch certain patterns, you learn those patterns, right? You learn how to respond. You learn how to push. You learn how to suppress. You learn how to how to react. And one of the things that I learned just even from watching my mother was how to endure, right? So she had such a strong will, a strong back. I'll say a strong back, right? Because to hold and to carry the things that I watched her carry, you got to have a strong back. You got to have about 4 or 5 spines, right? But I began as an adult to go back and process that, right? How did I learn how to stick in things that other normal people would check out when the symptoms show up? Like, no, you you operating in something else, and I'm not about to do this with you. But I learned from her that you stick to it, even when things are toxic, even when things are dysfunctional, even when things are not healthy, even when things are harmful, hurtful, all of those things. Because of that, conditioning that I watched her, I learned that, okay, well, if she did it, then okay, that's normal. And it's not, right? Being snatched out of your bed, and I write about this because I was noticing certain reactions as an adult, and I had to go back. Where was the first time I felt this? And it was being snatched out of the bed as a little girl. I'm talking like 3, 4, 5 years old, snatched out of the bed in the middle of the night to walk not 5 miles, 7 miles to grandma's house in the middle of the night, and the level of fear and the level of trying to, and I still to this day go back and think, how did my little legs do it? How did I suppress the fear? How did I suppress, the trauma? How did I do that? It was because I watched her do it. I watched how she made it look so normal and so effortless. And so even as an adult, I was conditioned that, oh girl, if you could do that, you can do this. Like, no, that's not, it's not normal. And we can push ourselves to limits that God never, he never engrafted that into our DNA. No, we are to have strong endurance, yes, but some things are just not normal. And because we normalize it, it becomes our crutch, it becomes our excuse, it becomes our, well, if I say something, this is something, and you talked about being a good girl, and this is in my adulthood, when you start to challenge dysfunction, this is how things are perverted, right? So you are processing someone's dysfunction, but they'll look at you and say, you too weak. I thought you were stronger than that. I thought you were a believer. I thought you had faith. Wait a minute. Yes, we have all of that. But what people will do is try to give you 100 proof of their dysfunction and their foolery and expect you to function in that, in godly character, and it's not possible. It's not possible. I had a counselor to tell me one time, she said, sweetheart, if you are going to make it through this season of your life, you're going to have to become as dysfunctional as what you're trying to stay in. Let that sit for a minute. If you're in essence, what she was saying, if you're insisting on staying in this, you're going to have to become just as dysfunctional just to be able to process it. How many of us don't have a counselor to tell us that, but that's exactly what we're doing? We are becoming just as dysfunctional, just as toxic, just to be able to handle and to stay in situations that we probably otherwise should not even be in, trying to process. But why do we process it that way? Because we've been conditioned to do it. Those are the things that I believe blocks, hinders, and stops the flow of true deliverance and wholeness in our lives, is because we're trying to carry and process what God is saying. I did not create you to handle that. I did not create. And I had to think about this. And Delisa brought this out about being daughters of God, being his handmaidens, we're special to God. And we really think that God wants us to be broken. We really think that it's his design and his desire for us to be in dysfunctional situations and processing toxic things. Think about that in your natural body. Just think, if you ate toxic things all the time, what is it going to do? It's going to eventually kill you. And that's exactly what staying in toxic things without adjusting and shifting and bringing a balance to things. When you don't do that, you're setting yourself up for sickness, disease, mental health issues. It's a whole plethora of things that we begin now, and then we somewhat praying God to heal us. And I'm not saying he can't, and I ain't saying he won't, but what I am saying, that's asinine to ask God to heal you from something that you keep ingesting. If he gonna heal me from lung cancer and I'm still smoking, that's oxymoronic, right? So we gotta first make the decision that we can acknowledge the conditioning, we can acknowledge the roots, the patterns, and then we are willing to free ourselves and free our minds to where God can bring healing. where he can be. I'm in a season in my life, Delisa, I'm with you. I'm in a season in my life to where this. Now, I watched my mother also process a lot of things in secret that was not discussed openly, right? So I'm breaking that cycle. If you act crazy with me in the open, guess what? I'm going to challenge you and check you in the open. So if you don't want family, friends, acquaintances, employers, and all these people to know, then we better learn respect. We better learn honor. We better learn it real quick, because what I will not do in this season of my life is cover up toxic, dysfunctional behaviors across the board. I don't care who it is. Children, husband, mamas, brothers. I don't care who it is. Associates, ministry, friend. It does not matter to me. If we are crazy enough to do it openly, I'm not going to be the one trying to suppress my emotions. Like, no, then we're going to deal with it, Johnny, on the spot. And that's a key to breaking cycles, is when you open up your mouth. You want to know what opening up your mouth and breaking the silence looks like? That's it. I'm not saying be ignorant with it. I'm not saying being crazy, not tactful with it, but I'm saying through godly wisdom, we need to start to address the elephants that keep showing up in rooms that sit on your chest and have you bound and have you crying, have you pulling out your hair while they still smiling in their full toxicity while you're being poisoned to death. No, if you're crazy enough to act out in front of somebody, then right there, everybody about to know, because I'm not doing it. Why? Because I am cleansing myself of all of the things that have had me bound for years. And when it starts to show up in sickness, that means you're carrying something too much. And it's not designed. We were never designed to hold all of this stuff in. It was meant to come out, right? I've gone through seasons of where I would just sit and tears would just flow, nothing necessarily wrong. But what I understood was I'm no longer processing, things and thoughts, because that's typically what we will do. We will sit and these thoughts will enter our minds. And then next thing you know, you're sitting there, you're bogged down with all of these emotions. You're not sure what's going on. And then people looking at you sideways and crazy, like, oh my gosh, she's so emotional. She's emotionally unstable. No, she has not learned how to release her emotions in a healthy way, right? And in a safe place. So I'm glad you brought that out about the conditioning, because I think this is an area to where many of us are not able to cross the bridge over into a more healthy and whole places, because we have not learned roots, we have not learned conditioning, we have not learned triggers and traumas and where that all began. And when you go back and you allow yourself to process the first time you felt it, that will be the road to your healing and breakthrough.
Amen. Let me jump in here real quick. And I promise I'm not gonna be that long. I promise you that one. But that was good. Apostle Mary, that was amazing. And I did forget about that root thing, because that's not my philosophy, but the way that I see things. If we never deal with the root of a thing, we never get to the reason why it exists, right? The reason why it's happening. And so I always aim, I've learned this. It wasn't something that just came natural. I had to learn, the Lord had to teach me. Always get to the root of it. So we get to the root of it, and you either cauterize it and kill it at the root, or you chop it at the root, or you heal it at the root. Then the fruit that comes after it is much different than what it was, right? And so we're talking about conditioning, and you said something. Oh man, I mean, this is gonna have to go on for like probably the next, really honestly probably needs to continue on for the next probably 3 to 4 episodes, because it's so much to unpack. It's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. Because when you talk about how you watched your mother deal with situations, well, she had to watch her mama or somebody else deal with situations the same way. Because I sat and I processed this when I dealt with abuse. It wasn't physical abuse in my marriage, but it was very much emotional. It was very much verbal, and it was very much mental, very much so. And so you can't sometimes see all of those things unless you have discernment. And you'll say, well, why are you leaving? Why? He's a good person. Yeah, he is. But he's verbally abusive. He's emotionally disconnected. He's mentally abusive. But you can't see that. But you say stick and stay. this is what we do. But I had to go back and look at my grandmother and my mother especially, because that's the one that I knew. But later in life, I knew that my grandmother did some of the same things. Well, why did you allow these men to do this? And why did you take them back? Why did you keep allowing re-entry? When you said, when they left, why didn't you just leave, let them go? We've got to get to the root of that. Well, we don't need a man. We don't need the genitals. Really, it's a longing to have a need fulfilled. So you put up with the nonsense because you don't want to not have that need fulfilled. But I'm not, and so that was the root of that. That was the root of perversion. The root of having a need fulfilled was why certain things were allowed, right? And then not feeling valued enough. Oh, God help me. Because we need to deal with it. We need to really unpack this stuff and really dig up this dirt, because we don't want to keep allowing stuff to just keep on top of stuff, and we really never get to the root of the matter, which is some of that stuff was bred in perversion. A lot of it in my generation, in my bloodline. And this is why spiritual generational mapping is so important. When you get to the root of it, you understand, okay, well, why did I allow this? And why do I keep allowing that? And why did they do that? Because it's in the DNA. Until we get to, and this is a phrase that I often say now, I've heard it years ago, but it's a regening, right? A regeneration, a regening, a reconstructing of the DNA and show that God has to do, and we allow him to do it and pull all that stuff up out of there. So we no longer operate from what mama did, what big mama did, what auntie and them did, and really allow God to heal the root of the thing. So what we saw, yes, that was a way of conditioning too. Accept this behavior because, he's a good provider. Accept this behavior because you need him sexually. You want him sexually. And there's a soul tie there that you can't get away from the genitals of the person that, the truth of the matter is just what it is. And if I say the other word, you're going to kick me off here, but it's okay. So listen, because we deal with certain things, because we find pleasure in other areas, so we just allow the mass to keep taking place. But no, but it's on the inside, it's killing us, and it's killing our children. And so I had to, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end it. I'm going to get off of it. I watched my daughter deal with the same thing in a same gender loving relationship with a person who was very abusive, very manipulative, and very demeaning to her. And she dealt with, thank God for the breaking of that now. And that just happened within the past 2 within the past 2 weeks. And I'll tell that testimony another day. But when I really got to the place where, okay, let me deal with the root of this, while my mother allowed the physical abuse, while we didn't feel protected by her, not just me, but my sister as well. While my grandmother allowed the abuse, while she let this man, my grandmother was 4'9", and she would jump up and slap the 6'1" male in his face because he messed with one of her grandchildren. One of those things. So I'm like, okay, well, you did that. She would, she wasn't afraid of anything, but she allowed my grandfather to do certain things. So we deal with all of that. And you get to the root of that. And while I allowed certain things in relationships, not just my marriage, but relationships, cut the root of it being rejection and not wanting to be alone. Let's deal with that, along with the perversion, along with the manipulation, along with all of that stuff. Deal with it, cut it, so that the next generation doesn't have to. And so, yeah, I had to watch it, but I couldn't say anything. Like, for my own child, I couldn't say anything because that was, again, Mary, everybody, Danny, Erica, and CJ, that was conditioning for her, as it was for me, as it was for you, watching your mama do this, watching your grandmother do this, watching her mama do that, and watching the women before her do that. That's how all that stuff is passed down. So again, if you don't remember nothing else I said out of that, we've got to get to the root. Spiritual mapping is important. Knowing what's in the bloodline and in the generation, and allowing, we say these words, but we don't really understand the meaning of them. It's always going to come back to spiritual for me. It's always going to come back to spiritual for me. It's always going to come back to spiritual for me. And a lot of people say it's too much. No, it's not. It's the word, and that's how God intended us to be. regening or regeneration of everything in our bloodline and our DNA that God never intended to be there. So that regeneration, we talk about regeneration when we talk about giving our lives to Christ and the blood of Jesus, the blood that he shed for us, that we apply that to our lives and we allow his blood to become that which transforms us even in our DNA. Now, I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I pray that it does at some point. I yield, and I'm probably done. I promise.
Let me tell y'all ladies, y'all do it for me, for real. Like, y'all really do it for me. Like, when it comes to the conversations, the things that we talk about, sharing our experiences, like, these are the things that I miss personally. Just in the general, population, and looking for like real things, real experiences that people are sharing, right? Because people, like Delisa said in the last episode, we can, give information, but people really rarely talk about their personal experiences and give you the candid, uncut, raw experiences to help others relate. As you were talking, Mary, as you were talking, Delisa, again, I'm just over here going back to my childhood and realizing that with every one of us in some capacity, there's a thread, there's a connection, there's a relatability because of even though we're living in we're different ages, live different bloodlines, but experiencing some of the same things. And when we talk about conditioning, and we talk about norms, because someone spoke about what's normal and what shouldn't be normal. But when you find the majority of people doing a thing or operating in a certain space, it is seen as normal, and we operate in that capacity. And even as you talk, Mary, about challenging dysfunction, like if you're the only person, or you're the only 2 or 3 people that are challenging the dysfunction that you're witnessing, or calling out the elephant in the room, if you will, if the majority is operating in that dysfunction, they're looking at you like something's wrong with you. And of course, they're going to do everything they can do to make you believe that you're the problem, or you're the issue, or that you're seeing something that's not there because the majority sees it this way. And so again, even in listening to yourself, listening to God, listening to that thing, like you said, Mary, checking it at the start when something doesn't feel right to you, when something is challenging your well-being overall, then it doesn't matter how many people are operating in that space. And if they're cool with that, they're cool with that. But if it's not cool with you, and if you're trying to, operate in a way, again, that helps you be better. And even as Delisa said, that place of conditioning and how we can observe it, that conditioning operating in our children or grandchildren and stuff. And it makes it hard for us to say something because we know where they got that from. We know what they saw or what they witnessed, willingly or unwillingly, that caused them to be in that same space. And so as we're endeavoring to continue our own healing and wholeness, and extending that olive branch to others to do the same, being mindful of our children and, grandchildren, even the people that we're assigned to influence or impact in certain way, how important it is for us to stay on that journey and experience as much healing and wholeness as we can. So we won't be able to eliminate anything. I mean, everything, but we can eliminate some things, and we can minimize the impact of other things to give our children, grandchildren, and those in our sphere of influence the space that they need to overcome. Is easier, to clean that, small pile on the floor of 5 or 6 things, that need to be washed, versus, the pile getting as high as my height and having to sort through that. So for those who are listening, and you might be feeling, you might, as you're listening to us, you're like, oh man, I see these patterns in my child, or I see these patterns in, myself, or whatever. Don't feel guilty. We do the best that we can with what we know, and then when we gain new information, when we get new revelation and we get new tools, then we implement those new tools. So it's not about guilting, it's not about shaming, it's not about condemning. It's about helping us move forward with better information, better tools to implement. So again, we can minimize those things that we can, and we can eliminate those things that we can. And in the other areas, we pray and we continue to work through until we achieve the healing that we desire. And I want to try to wrap it up too, because I want to give Erica and Danny an opportunity to speak as well. But just the thing, going back to what Delisa said about, her mother and her grandmother, right? Watching things. And I've observed that in my own family, my mother, my grandmother, and even my great grandmother, being physically abused. And, we had to run, as you did, Mary, as children, when my mom was trying to get away from her abusive, husband and stuff like that. And we would have to pack up, and, I can't remember, every detail of what happened, but just being in a new place, or new space. And then sometimes being back in that same space with the man, and it was a running until, and going back until she finally left and didn't come back. And so, but when it comes to the physical abuse, like just from a mental and emotional wellness standpoint, people only talk about the physical abuse. They only talk about when you're in a relationship and you're experiencing the physical abuse. That's when it's a problem, right? But they don't talk about, they're doing it now, a little more, but there was no conversations about you being called out of your name, you being, told you're nothing, you're being criticized and judged for your appearance or how you talk or how you do, those things. They didn't talk about those things. It was, if you were physically abused, that might be a red flag, that might be a problem. You might want to get out of that situation. And so again, in my own relationships, I've not been physically abused, but I've definitely also been verbally, mentally, emotionally abused. But the red flags the alarms didn't go off for me, because I was taught physical abuse is the problem. And observing that, in the women in my family line, even seeing them fight back, right? So there was a time where they were physically abused and they did nothing about it. Then they started fighting back. Then you saw the arguing and the fussing and different things like that. And so in my mind, as I went through my marriage, it was, okay, well, you say something to me, I'm gonna say something to you. You go off on me, I'm gonna go off on you. I'm not gonna sit here and take that, the verbal part of it, but my reference point was from them. But again, it wasn't the physical aspect. It was it was the physical aspect for them. So initially I didn't say nothing, but then I'm like, no, who you think he talking to? You don't talk to me like that, And so now I'm talking back, but again, realizing that that's still dysfunctional. That's still toxic, And so myself becoming more aware of the mental and emotional aspect as a human being, even when we're dealing with children, the how we talk to children and how we, navigate those relationships with them, like planting those things in their heads, telling them you're stupid, you're dumb, you're never going to be nothing, you're just like your father, you're just like your mother. Like those things are seeds that are planted inside of them that they're going to that are going to be watered in their lives as well. And then they grow up and become adults like us, who are having to figure out how to deal with those things that they were planted in them, as children. And so, and another thing too, when it comes to the older generations, is the fact that Delisa brought up, them being providers and, the sexual aspect of it, the need or the desire for it, but then also understanding too that the oppression on women was a lot harsher than it is now. They could not work. They were groomed to be in the house, rearing the children, cleaning up the home, all those different things. And so, because they could not financially provide for themselves or weren't allowed to for whatever reason, then they were forced basically to deal with things that they wouldn't. Other families, sometimes the men had, one or two families down the street and around the corner, and our mamas and grandmamas knew about it, but couldn't do anything about it. But even for us, fast forward in this space, and again, the conditioning, how strong it is that now we're in spaces where we can work and provide for ourselves. We can, obtain degrees and, everything that we need to be financially independent, but we're still carrying the same conditioning from old because of certain words and certain phrases and certain things that we witness growing up, still, implanted in our DNA or genetics, as Delisa pointed out earlier, that needs to be dealt with. And so I wanted to, kind of point that out about how even though the external things have changed, and we have more access as women, we're still dealing with the things internally that need to be changed, or transformed and stuff like that. So, and then also the last point, and I promise you, I'm passing it on. I like the sound like Delisa now. The value in being useful, and it goes back to the previous episode for us as Black women. Our value has been found in our usefulness to others, right? And again, going back to slavery, as Delisa said, we're taking care of other people's children. We're having other people's children. We're taking care of their homes. We're in our workplace, we have to do so much more to prove that we're competent enough, that we're adept enough, that we're educated enough, and all of it goes back to us being useful. So our value is in how we can be useful to somebody else. And it's not about getting to know us as a person. It's not about valuing who we are. And it's not about seeing how and enjoying or just having a relationship with other people based upon them enjoying who we are as people versus what can I get from you, or what they can get from us to benefit them. And so, yeah, I just wanted to point that out too, that our value is not in first what we can do for people. Our value is in who we are as human beings, who we are as women, and even who we are as Black women. And and we matter. Our voices matter. Our intellect matter. Our personalities matter. Our needs and our wants matter, just like everybody else. So I just wanted to point those out. And so now, Danny or Erica, if y'all wanted to chime in, I'm going to turn it over to y'all.
Thank you for that, CJ. I was thinking about the conditioning, right? We all know that fear is rooted in rejection, which is tied to our amygdala, which typically it affects our nervous system, and which in turn it affects our throat, right? In order for us to be able to speak. And either we go into flight or fight mode. So even as children, the things that have happened to us, we're still carrying the trauma because trauma lives in our body, right? And so, and even going back to the root of a thing, you can deal with the root, right? But then if you don't replant something else in there, you're still going to be dealing with the residue. So hence you have this cycle where you're continuously going through these different cycles because it's still the residue. Because when you think about a tree stump, you can cut the tree down to the root, right? But under that tree stump, there's roots, right? So it's like, what are you replacing? What you've uprooted, what are you replacing it with? And so a lot of times I don't think, because a lot of things that we go through, they're natural, but then they're also spiritual. So you have to deal with the spiritual as well as you have to deal with the natural. But sometimes we only deal with the spiritual and we don't deal with the natural. I think Delisa or either Mary said that we deal with the symptoms, right? But what is the root of the thing that we're dealing with? Is it the perversion, right, that has brought us into a place in order to keep that thing alive? I know in my marriage, my previous marriage, when I had first got saved or whatever, when I first gave my life to the Lord, based on what I saw, based on what my how my mother showed up is how I showed up in my marriage. But I showed up in a different way just based on religion. And so when Delisa started talking about being a daughter, I want to speak to the woman who doesn't know what a daughter looks like, right? It's like you get saved, you give your I wasn't raised in the church, you get saved, you give your life to the Lord, but you've never been fathered. And somebody's telling you we have to relate to him as father, right? But coming into religion or Christianity, you learn God, you learn Abba by rules and regulations. And so you're still bound if you haven't had a healthy relationship with your natural father, you don't know how to relate to the heavenly father. And so the relationship becomes transactional. And so we don't know how to be daughters. We don't know how to rest in his presence. We don't know how to take on the things that he said that we're the apple of his eye, right? That we're his beloved. Those things are foreign to us until our heart posture begins to change and we have an encounter with him, like what Delisa is going through now, where he exposes, will we allow him to expose himself to love us? Because when I first got saved, it was transactional. I was doing all the things, praying, following all the rules, right? All the things that we shouldn't be doing. But nobody taught me how to be a daughter. Nobody taught me how to receive his love. Nobody taught me how to sit in his presence. And so until I had an encounter with him, I was able to accept him as father. I was able to accept him as father. I was able to see myself as a daughter. I understood that I had rights to the kingdom, and the things that had me bound no longer had me bound. And so no matter what I go through, or no matter what you may go through at the top and the end of it, the Father, he just wants to love you. He doesn't want the relationship to be transactional. So we can say, we can say like all the things, but the most important thing is that you know him and he knows you, right? And the pardon of our sins. And so I think sometimes we miss that because we've been conditioned, right, in church in order to show up. I think CJ said, I think everyone probably said it. We show up doing all the works, but God, he doesn't want our works. He wants our hearts, right? And so our posture like has to be different. So we can do, all the things are beautiful. But if we don't get to the root, and if we don't know our posture, and if we don't know who we are as daughters, we're going to continuously go back to the same place because the work was already completed on the cross. So there's nothing that we would ever go through that has not already been defeated. But the thing is, it's like, do we really believe? Right? Do we really believe that God loves us the way that he said that he loves us? Do we really believe that Jesus died on the cross for you, that he died on the cross for me? Do we really believe that? And so really, again, it goes back, I think pretty much everyone has said it. It really just goes back to heart posture, right? Because the things that we've been through, this even as children, even our cultural condition, is the sum total of who we are. There are things that happen to us, but sometimes we allow it to define who we are. So we're still showing up in our dysfunction. We're operating, we have businesses, we're showing up at jobs, but it's like we have holes in our soul, right? We deal with the spirit, but we don't deal with the soul. And so that's where the healing happens. It happens in our soul. It doesn't happen outside of that. So we have to get to the root of what's happening in our soul, right? And then I think Delisa, yeah, it was Delisa, she was talking about, the soul ties, right? A lot of times the people that we're connected to is like we're trauma bonding, right? So we're connecting with people who have the same trauma that we have, whether it's in religion, whether it's in relationships. It 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 doesn't it could be work. It's like we're bonding based on that. And so until those things are identified by way of Holy Spirit taking us, allowing him to take us through a healing journey, to be able to sit into the pain, to be able to see it, sit, release it, and move to the next thing. And then a lot of times when we do go through deliverance, we don't sit in it long enough because we're on to the next thing. And so we wind back up in the same place, or we wind back up in the cycle. But I believe that God wants to begin to break cycles in each and every one of our lives, and any woman that may be listening, so that you can walk in the fullness of who it is that God has called you out to be, because you're not the abuse. You're not the lies. You're not what mama said. You are more than enough. You're the head. You're the head. You're the head and not the tail. You're above and not beneath. And there is nothing that the Father would not do for us if we just rest in his presence.
Mary, I see your head going. Erica, that was awesome. I wanted to comment on one particular thing you said, but Mary, I want you to go ahead and share what you're stewing over there.
Yeah, Erica and Delise, as always, is like they say things that just like pow 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 pow. But she brought up trauma bonding, and I was actually thinking codependency. And when Delisa was talking about even her daughter, and I believe this is true for a lot of us and our children and our grandchildren, is they sometimes we will vow never to go through or experience what we witness or what may have been traumatic to us. So a lot of times people will go to the opposite side, but the root is still there. So you're going to take this dysfunction to the opposite side, or we're going to attract or deal with either through trauma bonding or the codependency. And what is the codependency? We suppress our own needs and desires to please someone else, to try to fix someone else. And so the cycle just continues, because really it doesn't matter which barrel you put the apple in. If there's rotten spots, you're going to rotten other apples, or the other apples are going to rotten you. So it's still a root, and there's still a self-evaluation that we all need, because I said it. I promise you I said it. I vow, I refuse. I will not go through any of this. And lo and behold, I'm looking around like, well, how in the world did I get here? How did I get here? How is it that I'm still experiencing some of the same things, the same triggers, the still traumas? It's because in all of my plight to not become a victim of my circumstances, because I had not dealt with the roots and processed the traumas and processed the conditioning, I found myself attracted to the same thing. You only know what you know, and what you don't know, you just don't know it until you get in it. And you're like, oh my God, I thought I was on a different street, and these are the same woods I've been going around for 15 times. But no, it's not. It's in us. And until we go and we really do self-evaluations and dig out all of those things, we will continue to find ourselves in toxic situations. And I know so many people watching this or listening to this could probably relate to the fact that you, in your heart of hearts, you know what you did not want and you know what you wanted, but some kind of way you found yourself right in the midst of what you were running so fast to get away from. It's because it's still in you, and you will attract that. Trauma will attract trauma. I don't care what this is saying. This can say all day long, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. But if you ain't dealt with in here, you're still going to be attracted to that same thing, because trauma, that's what it needs. That trauma needs to feel, ain't that crazy? You're knowing you want love, you want respect, you want honor, but that trauma only knows what it knows. So that is what it's longing for. That is the craziest thing, but it is the truth. And until we understand the ramifications of not addressing things, we're going to continue in a cycle of codependency and in trauma bonding. Break the bond, break that bloodline, that bloodthirsty vessel of trauma, so that you can cut that thing off and you can start to see healthy, whole, a better you. I mean, I feel like now that my voice is back, I'm a better version of me. I really feel like in all of my 53 years or 35, whichever one it is, I lost count. I I am a better version of me when I got my voice. If nobody else is listening, I need to listen to me. I need to pay attention to what's going on with me. And I need to understand that. Nobody can understand your whys and where you came from but you. Like you can't expect people around you to know, what happened to us as children or what happened to us in bad relationships, but giving voice to those things, not out of hurt, not out of unhealed places, but really out of your place of trying to be complete and whole, to put a voice to those things. And I don't have a problem saying, you know, this was something that I processed as a child, or this is something that I processed in another relationship that was unhealthy and it was abusive. And because it felt like that to me, that's the only thing I can process. So there needs to be a shift in how we tread this area because it does something to me and I only know how to respond, right? I don't care what this is telling me. When something is hit in your emotions, that's where you're going to respond from until we learn to get a handle on those things and to see it for what it is. Everybody is not the same. And though some things may feel like it is, it's always a good thing to step back and process, why am I feeling this? When was the first time I felt it? And to allow yourself to deal with that and sit in it. I think Erica said that we got to learn how to sit in things and not try to bulldoze through, and then you still end up burning, going up in smoke. We have to process what we feel. And sometimes I'll go sit outside, and Danny know my little oasis out back. I'll go and sit out there, and I will sit in certain things that I'm feeling. And once I get a handle on it, I can now go back and enter into the situation and say, you know what, that made me feel this. It's not placed in blame. It's not, I'm taking ownership of what was said, what was done made me feel this. And this is why I felt it. It's a road to recovery. It's a process. We cannot be afraid to go through the process. So I'm praying that when you begin to release and when you begin to get your voice back, that you don't allow insecurities or you don't allow rejection or the fear of rejection to cause you to go back into a place of silence. Push through those emotions and get to the other side of this thing, because until you do, you're going to stay in this circle and this pattern of being broken and unhealed and hurt over everything. I think we all have a link with rejection, both naturally and spiritually, I'm sure. And that is a beast because it causes you to go back to silence, go back to processing within yourself and not giving yourself voice. I'm another one. I'll walk in a room and depending on who in there, I'll dumb down. Why? We all are individual people with a voice that we were given unique to us. Use it. Good, bad, the ugly, indifferent. Use your voice, because that in your voice and speaking it, you're going to find your freedom and your liberty and your peace in Jesus' name. That's all I want to share.
I love y'all. I love hearing y'all. Y'all, all of y'all do again. Y'all do something for me. Like my head just be about to explode over here. Um, and I be trying to keep up. And I don't want to be the one, talking about when I'm sharing based upon the stuff that y'all are telling me, I be feeling like I be done just be talking too much. But Mary, you said some things. Erica said something about the tree stump and how we can cut the tree down, right, but not get to the root, right? And when it comes to and I think Delisa put in the chat again, that place of like removing something, but we got to replace it with something. If we just do the removal and we don't do the replacing, inevitably we'll go back to the default. We'll go back to what we know. And so I need you all to understand that as you're contemplating, as you're reflecting, as you're sitting with your deliverance, or you're sitting with your dysfunction, you're sitting in your soul, and you're determining what needs to be excavated. You also need to have a plan or a strategy in place, or know what needs to be replanted as well, because it's essential that if we're going to break the cycles, or we're going to endeavor to not continue in some of the same cycles, that we have to produce another cycle. We have to have another cycle to go back to go to. And so that means that we have to replant. We have to, sometimes new soil, getting in a new environment. Sometimes when we talk about dumbing down, when we go into rooms, sometimes, when you buy a pot, and it's a plant, and it's in this little pot right here, in order for it to grow and develop its root system, and to grow out the way it needs to be, it needs a bigger pot. And so even as we're in rooms where we feel like we need to dumb down, we might need to be in different rooms where we can grow and continue to expand, where we don't feel the pressure or feel the need, because of who's in the room, to dumb ourselves down. Because if we're in the right environment, we're in the right soil, then the promotion, the fertilization, the expectation even is to grow up, to grow down, and to grow up and out, right? And so being mindful even of some of the environments that we're in. And if we're in an environment and we have to, be in that environment because it's our assignment, or whatever the case may be, then again, that's a personal challenge to us to not resort to, again, the default conditioning, which is to dumb ourselves down or make ourselves small, so that we're digestible to other people who, if we feel it, we probably shouldn't, they probably don't have the capacity in the first place. And so we need to be mindful of that. If I got to dumb myself down in order to be around this person or to interact with this person, then they probably don't have the capacity in the first place. And again, that's not our problem, that's their problem. And that's something that they need to work out within themselves. So I love what you said, Eric, about the removing, and dealing with the root and making sure that we replace it with something. And then Mary, as you were talking about the mind, how we, know something up here, how we tell ourselves, it made me think about the Apostle Paul when he said, the thing that I want to do, I don't do. The thing that I don't want to do, I do, right? And so again, and we all know that the Apostle Paul was an intellect, right? And so that place of where we have all the knowledge up here, we can recognize right and wrong, but then when it comes to the soul, right, we don't do what we need to do in the soul, which involves our emotions, which involves our feelings, right? And it made me think of a quote, a head education without a heart education is no education at all. And so again, even as we're acquiring scripture, even as we're acquiring, psychological content, intellectual content, but we're making our heads big with information and knowledge. But then how are we integrating our souls in that process? How are we identify or acknowledging? And I can say for myself, I'm definitely a head-driven person. And so being in that space where I have to have had to practice sitting with my emotions, identifying my emotions, what they are, what I'm feeling, what they're trying to tell me, and then bridging my mind and my heart together, or my intellect and my emotions together, to determine what's the best outcome for me, so that I can again be in the space of healing and wholeness, or not repeating cycles, but continuing in that progress, right, toward healing and wholeness. And the last thing I want to point out is we got to be careful of the slogans and taglines and things that we ascribe ourselves to. That saying, when you know better, you do better, right? I've learned that when you know how to do better, you do better. And again, it goes back to what the Apostle Paul said. I know what's right and I know what's wrong. I keep doing what's wrong and I rarely do what's right. Right. And it's because we need to know how. I know intellectually that this is wrong, but if I don't know how to do right, I'm going to continue to do wrong. And so the place of where we need information, we need education, we need practical tools. Again, going back to that removal and replacing. So if this is wrong, I know this is wrong, then what is the right thing to do and how do I implement that so that I can get the right results, so that I can get the fruit that I'm looking for, or that God is looking for in me to produce in my life, and then help others to produce in their lives as well. And so yeah, that and I can talk more, but I'm gonna leave it there and let you guys chime in, and then we'll bring this episode to a close in just a few. So any final words or last comments that anybody want to share?
Yes, very quickly. Let me say this. All of this has been amazing. Great. Thank God for balance, right? And everything coming full circle. And what I mean by that is where it doesn't matter. I just thank God for balance, because knowing that the uprooting needs to happen, the balance is replanting something in its place, right? And so with that, what the Lord just said to me is that we need to talk about safe places. We've talked about this before, but we need to reiterate, yes, Lord, I hear you. Safe places, safe spaces for when this trauma, everything that's connected to trauma, everything that's connected to dysfunction, everything that's connected to silence is uprooted. There needs to be a safe place where the person doesn't know necessarily how to plant or replant something there. There needs to be safe spaces to where they can be replanted in by those who have the heart of the Father, not hirelings, not pimps, not any of those people, but people who have the heart of the Father, who can replant or reseed in them what needs to be there. And so we have to, we have to, you all don't have to. Yeah, we do have to avail ourselves at some point to be able to be these safe places for these people that are coming, because they are coming. And so the Lord spoke to me. I don't remember who was talking, somebody, I think it was either Mary or somebody. And he said that we have to deal with the issue of privacy, right? Because some people say, well, the silence is because I'm so private. No, it's not because, but okay, I understand, and I'm a private person too. But in my privacy, it caused me more damage in holding things because I didn't have the necessary help to navigate or walk through things, because I held on to the belief that I had to be private and had to keep it all to myself. So when does privacy become dangerous? We have to deal with that too. And we can deal with that next episode if we want to. But safe places to where women, young girls need to be able to come and lay bare, naked, to those who have their best interest at heart, because they have the heart of the Father and are able to impart or replant or put back in them that which should have been put in them. I feel this very strongly, by a natural parent, but because it wasn't, then we have to be those mothers who nurture, who plant and nurture those spaces in them. And we're not taking any glory for this. I don't even want it. I don't tell you the truth, I don't even want to be bothered. That's the honest to God truth. It's the honest to God truth. It is, because I know what it takes. But I know what it takes because I've been there. I've walked there. But I also know what it takes to stay there. And so in order to be those places to where they're not further damaged, right? Or where they release the trauma, where they're free to release the trauma. And it can't just be, it can be in the therapist's office, but it's not always it's not going to end in a therapist's office. It's not going to end there. It's going to really end with relationships that are safe, that are mothering and nurturing. That's where it's going to end at. It can start with the therapist. They'll dig up the stuff. They'll uproot the stuff. Some of them will replant the stuff, but it's going to take a mothering or a pastoring figure to get those people back to where they go, until they develop relationship with the Father, and He does that for them Himself. That makes sense. I pray it does. But we have to be those safe places, contact information, reach out, and I'll put that there in the chat in a few seconds. But that's where I would like to end. When does privacy become dangerous? Is privacy, we're all private to some degree. But when does that spill over into danger? I mean, like I said, this is unpacking, because when we look at women whose lives have been taken by men who are supposed to love them, not just them, and we have a few instances, I have about 10 that I can name right now, whose men who went and killed their wives or their girlfriends and their children for whatever reason. And they felt like maybe that was private to them, and they didn't have a safe place to release that to others where their lives could have been spared. And so I end with that.
I just wanted to give a practical, some practical advice. As women, magnesium, vitamin D, make sure you're drinking your water, exercising, and rest. That's just from a practical, natural standpoint. Magnesium, vitamin D, rest, exercise will help regulate our nervous systems.
Thank you both for that. I think, and I'll check with Delisa on this offline, but we might be continuing this on. Again, it's super layered. It's super layered, and I believe that is very important during this time. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and allow for us to end this episode, and make sure that again you subscribe and you follow us on social media so that you won't miss the next episode. These are important conversations. So ladies, I appreciate you all being as anointed, as gifted, as transparent, and as real as you can be with this and handling this topic, and just women in general with such care, and attention, and a delicacy that it definitely needs, but also with with the truth that it needs as well. So again, ladies, I love you and I appreciate you all for being here on today. For those of you who are watching, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Whole Women Collective, 5 Women, 1 Collective. This space was created with intention to have real conversations that lead to healing, growth, and transformation. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, we encourage you to stay connected. Subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media, and share this episode with someone that may need to hear it. Because when women come together in honesty, in wisdom, and in faith, something powerful happens. And we believe, as you've heard the common thread, that this journey toward wholeness is not meant to be walked alone. Until next time, remember, wholeness is possible, healing is available, and your story matters. We'll see you in the next conversation.